Money gets taxed the moment it touches your hands. But somehow, the richest people in America touch billions and barely leave fingerprints. What if the problem was never how much you earn, but how the entire game was designed? Here's the reality most people never stop to question. You work, you get paid, and before the money even feels real, a chunk of it is already gone. Federal taxes, state taxes, payroll taxes. Then you invest what's left, and if it grows, you pay again. You sell something valuable, you pay again. You pass it down, and your kids pay again. It feels like the same dollar gets punished every time it moves. And for most people, that feels normal, inevitable, just the cost of living in America. But behind the scenes, there's a completely legal strategy that flips this logic on its head. A strategy that lets some of the wealthiest individuals access enormous amounts of cash without triggering taxes at all. No less tax, zero tax. And once you see how it works, you can't unsee how backward the system really is. So here's the uncomfortable question you need to sit with. If this is all legal, why are you playing a version of the game where you lose by default? Let's start with something you already understand intuitively. The tax code loves income. Salary is income. Bonuses are income. Dividends are income. Capital gains become income the moment you sell. That's what the IRS is built to track and tax. But there's one category the tax code treats very differently. Debt. Borrowed money is not income. It's a liability. And the IRS does not tax liabilities. That single distinction is where the entire system cracks open. Most people use debt the way they're told to use it. You borrow $300,000 to buy a house, then you spend 30 years paying it back with after-tax income. Every dollar you use to repay that loan has already been taxed. Debt feels heavy, stressful, something to escape as fast as possible. Wealthy individuals look at the same tool and see something completely different. They don't ask, how fast can I get out of debt? They ask, how long can I stay in it without losing control? That mindset shift changes everything. Here's the strategy, often quietly referred to as borrow until you die. Not as a joke, not as shock value, as a literal description of what happens. First, you own assets, not just savings. Assets, a business with predictable cash flow, real estate in high-demand areas, a diversified stock portfolio, intellectual property, things that tend to rise in value over time. These assets aren't static. They're growing at 8%, 10%, sometimes even faster, depending on the cycle. Now, if you're playing the traditional game and you want to use that wealth, you sell part of the asset. The moment you do, the tax meter starts running. Capital gains, state taxes. Sometimes surtaxes on $1 million asset can easily mean giving up $200,000 or more just for the privilege of accessing your own money. The wealthy don't sell, they pledge. They walk into a bank and use that asset as collateral. Instead of selling $1 million asset, they borrow $500,000 against it. The loan hits their account as cash, but it's not income. It's debt. No tax event, no capital gains, no explanation required. The interest rate might be 4 or 5%. And if the loan is structured properly, that interest can often be tax deductible. So now you're using borrowed money to fund your lifestyle, invest in other opportunities, or expand your business, all without selling the underlying asset. And here's where the compounding effect turns almost surreal. While you're spending or reinvesting the borrowed cash, the original asset keeps appreciating. That $1 million asset becomes $1.2 million the next year. The loan is still $500,000. Your net worth just increased by $200,000, and you didn't trigger a single dollar of tax. Then the cycle repeats. Next year, the asset is worth more. You refinance, borrow a bit more, or deploy the existing loan into something that grows even faster. Real estate, private equity, strategic stock positions. Sometimes even tax-optimized selling strategies use options to reduce exposure without triggering a sale. This is where access matters. The wealthy aren't just buying assets. They're operating in markets most people never touch. Dark pools where large trades don't move prices. Structured buybacks that quietly boost share value. The media influence that shapes narratives around their holdings. Short and distorted campaigns that push prices down so insiders can accumulate quietly. Options feedback loops where derivative activity amplifies gains on the underlying asset. To the outside world, it looks like genius investing. Inside the system, it's leverage stacked on leverage, all anchored to assets that banks are happy to lend against. And then comes the final move, the one that turns decades of borrowed money into a clean exit. When the asset owner dies, their heirs inherit the assets at what's called a stepped-up basis. That's a technical phrase for one of the largest tax advantages in the entire system. It means the value of the asset resets to its market price at the date of death. All the appreciation that happened over the decades simply disappears for tax purposes. The loans don't vanish, but the estate can settle them by selling a small portion of the now much more valuable assets. Because of the stepped-up basis, there's little to no capital gains tax. The person lived off borrowed money for decades, paid virtually no income tax on it, and passed on assets wrapped in a built-in tax shield. Debt in this world isn't a burden. It's a tool, a lever, a way to turn ownership into liquidity without consequence. So naturally, you might be thinking this sounds illegal, or at least unfair. Where's the catch? The catch is that the tax code isn't designed to stop wealth. It's designed to tax income. Borrowed money isn't income. You can't tax someone for owing money. That would be absurd. So the wealthy structure their entire financial lives around this distinction: own assets, let them grow, borrow against them, repeat. Is it aggressive? Absolutely. Is it available to everyone? Not even close. Banks don't lend freely. They want stability, predictable cash flow, assets with long track records. A billionaire with a $5 billion company can borrow billions against it. Someone with $100,000 in stocks can technically use the same mechanics, but the terms will be far stricter, and the margin for error is razor thin. And this is where the ethical tension comes in. The system effectively creates two tax realities. One for people who earn income, where every dollar is visible and taxable, and one for people who own assets, where appreciation can be accessed indefinitely through leverage. But before you see this as a cheat code, you need to understand the risks that come with it. First, the debt is real. This isn't imaginary money. Loans eventually need to be refinanced or settled. If credit tightens or lenders lose confidence, that flexibility can disappear fast. Second, market risk. This strategy assumes assets keep appreciating. If a recession hits and your asset drops 40%, suddenly you're over-leveraged. A $500,000 loan on a $600,000 asset is a dangerous place to be. Banks can demand more collateral or force liquidation. Third, interest rates matter. Borrowing at 5% while your assets grow at 4% means you're quietly losing ground. Leverage only works when growth outpaces cost. And fourth, the risk that keeps policymakers up at night. If too many people start using this strategy, it won't last. History is full of tax advantages that vanished overnight once they became too visible. The system works under current rules, not permanent ones. But here's the real value in understanding all of this. Even if you never use the strategy, it shows you how wealth actually operates. The wealthy aren't just earning more, they're playing a different game. They're not stuck in the earn, tax, repeat loop. They're using the structure of the rules themselves as the engine. Meanwhile, someone making $100,000 a year pays tax on every single dollar. They don't have access to insider deal flow. They can't influence narratives. They can't borrow cheaply against massive assets. The system isn't built for them. That's why mindset matters. Some people hear this and think there's nothing they can do. Others ask a better question. How do I start owning assets instead of just earning income? That's the shift. Building businesses, acquiring real estate, creating intellectual property, owning things that appreciate instead of only selling your time. The path forward isn't a 5% raise. It's ownership. So let's recap. Wealth at the top isn't built through income. It's built through assets and leverage. The tax code has always favored ownership over labor. It's not hidden, it's just not taught. And if you want to build real wealth, you have to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an asset owner. If this changed how you see money, hit like. If you want more breakdowns of how these systems actually work, subscribe. And let me know in the comments what part of this surprised you most.